The big spaceship Aurora flew through the dark sky between stars. It carried 2,000 people to a new world far from Earth. Captain John Hayes stood on the bridge and watched the stars. Lisa Park worked with computers and science tools. Danny Cruz kept everyone safe. And little Amy Bell sat in the corner, only 8 years old and very quiet since her mom and dad died in an accident 3 days ago. "Captain, we have a problem," Lisa said. Her voice was scared. "The main engine is breaking. We cannot fix it." John looked at the big screen. A planet appeared in front of them. It was purple and orange with strange rocks sticking up like giant fingers. "We have to land there," he said. "Tell everyone to get ready for a crash." The Aurora shook and made loud noises. Fire came from the back of the ship. People screamed and held tight to their seats. Amy closed her eyes and thought about her parents. The ship hit the ground very hard. Metal broke and glass shattered everywhere. When the noise stopped, John stood up. His head hurt and blood came from a cut on his face. "Is everyone alive?" he called out. Lisa checked her computer. It still worked a little bit. "Most people are okay, but the ship is broken. We cannot leave this planet." Danny looked outside through a crack in the wall. The sky was orange and purple. Strange trees grew everywhere, but they looked like glass instead of wood. The air smelled different too. "We need breathing masks," he said. "The air here is not good for us." They gave everyone masks to help them breathe. Then they started to fix the ship and make it safe. John, Lisa, and Danny worked very hard. Amy helped by bringing them water and food, but they were not alone on this planet. On the second day, the ground shook. Big footsteps came closer and closer. Danny grabbed his gun and looked outside. "Something is coming," he said. "Something very big." Through the purple mist came giant creatures. They walked on 4 legs and were as big as houses. Their skin was black like metal. Their eyes glowed red like fire. Sharp teeth filled their huge mouths. On their backs sat tall alien beings. These aliens were the Vorthak. They stood 9 feet tall with hard skin like armor. They had 4 arms and sharp claws. Their faces looked angry and mean. They carried big weapons that shot blue light. "What are those things?" Lisa asked. She was very scared. "Trouble," Danny said. He called to all the humans. "Everyone get inside the ship. Lock all the doors." The leader of the Vorthak was named War Master Krex. He had more scars than the others and bigger weapons. He pointed at the broken human ship and spoke in a loud, angry voice. The other Vorthak nodded and got ready to fight. The giant creatures they rode were called Grimworgs. They were born to fight and kill. The Vorthak had trained them since they were babies to obey and attack. The biggest Grimworg was called Bloodfang. He had fought in 100 battles and never lost. Scars covered his black scales. His red eyes held intelligence and old anger. Krex pointed at the human ship. "Kill them all," he said in his language. "Take their metal for our weapons." The Grimworgs roared. The sound was so loud that it broke more glass in the human ship. They ran toward the Aurora with their mouths open, ready to bite and tear. Danny shot his gun at them. The bullets hit their skin but did not hurt them much. "Our weapons are too weak," he told John. "We cannot fight these things." John made a quick decision. "Everyone go deeper into the ship. Find the strongest rooms and hide there. Maybe we can wait until they go away." The humans ran through the broken hallways. Parents carried their children. Old people moved as fast as they could. Amy ran with them, but she was small and got pushed by the crowd. The Grimworgs hit the outside of the ship. Their claws tore through metal like paper. The Vorthak jumped down and walked inside with their weapons ready. Blue light shot everywhere as they looked for humans to capture or kill. In all the noise and fear, Amy got lost. She turned down the wrong hallway and could not find the others. She heard the terrible roaring getting closer. Her heart beat very fast and she felt tears in her eyes. She found a small room and hid behind some boxes, but the door was broken and would not close. Through the gap she saw red eyes looking at her. The biggest Grimworg had found her. Bloodfang pushed his huge head through the door. His teeth were as long as Amy's arm. His breath was hot and smelled like metal and old blood. He had killed many enemies and never showed mercy to anyone. Amy looked up at the giant creature. She was not big enough to run. She was not strong enough to fight. All she could do was stand there and look into his burning red eyes. But Amy was different from other people. Even though she was scared, she was also curious. She had always loved animals back on Earth. Dogs, cats, horses. They all liked her because she was gentle and kind. Looking at Bloodfang, she did not see just a monster. She saw something else. Behind the anger in his eyes, she saw sadness. Behind the violence, she saw loneliness. This creature had never known kindness in his whole long life. The little girl and the giant warbeast stared at each other in the broken room, while the battle raged around them. Amy stood very still as Bloodfang pushed his huge head closer. The giant Grimoire could bite her in half with one snap of his jaws. His red eyes studied her face. He had never seen anything like this small human before. In the hallways around them, the battle continued. Other Grimoires roared and broke things. Vorthak warriors shouted orders and shot their blue weapons. Humans screamed and ran for safety. But in this small room, everything was quiet except for the heavy breathing of the great beast. Amy looked into Bloodfang's eyes and saw something that surprised her. Behind all the anger and violence, she saw pain. This creature was hurt inside. Not his body, but his heart. For 300 years he had known only fighting and killing. No one had ever been kind to him. The Vorthak had taken Bloodfang from his mother when he was just a baby. They put him in a dark cage and taught him to hate. When he did not obey, they hurt him with electric sticks. When he tried to be gentle, they punished him. They made him fight other young Grimwargs. The weak ones died. The strong ones became weapons. Bloodfang learned that kindness meant weakness. Love meant pain. The only way to survive was to be the strongest and most feared. He became the perfect killer. But deep inside, in a place he had forgotten, was the small creature who once wanted to play and be loved. Amy could see this hidden part of him. Children are good at seeing things that adults miss. She was not afraid anymore. Instead, she felt sorry for the giant warbeast. He was lonely, just like her. Slowly, Amy lifted her small hand. Bloodfang watched her carefully. His muscles were ready to attack, but the little girl did not try to hurt him or run away. She just held out her hand, like she wanted to touch him. "It's okay," Amy said in a soft voice. "I won't hurt you." Bloodfang tilted his massive head. He did not understand her words, but he could hear something in her voice. It was gentle and warm. No one had ever spoken to him like this before. Amy took a small step forward, then another. Bloodfang could have killed her easily, but he did not move. Something about this tiny human made him curious. She was so small and weak, but she was not afraid of him. Why? The little girl reached out and touched his nose. Her hand was so tiny compared to his huge head. Her fingers were warm and soft. Bloodfang had never felt anything like this gentle touch. The Vorthak only touched him to hurt him or put him in chains. Amy smiled. "You're not really a monster, are you?" she said. "You're just sad and alone." Even though Bloodfang could not understand the words, he understood the feeling behind them. This human child was not his enemy. She did not want to use him or hurt him. She just wanted to be kind to him. For the first time in 300 years, Bloodfang felt something strange in his chest. It was warm and good. He did not know what to call it, but humans had a word for it. Hope. Amy patted his nose gently. "What's your name, big guy?" she asked. Of course, she could not understand when he tried to tell her in his own language, but she listened anyway. The sound of fighting was getting closer. Soon the Vorthak would find them. Amy heard Captain Hayes calling her name from somewhere in the ship. She had to go back to her people, but she did not want to leave this lonely creature. "I have to go," she said sadly, "but I don't want you to be alone anymore." Bloodfang understood that she was leaving. He felt panic rise in his chest. For the first time in his life, he had found someone who was kind to him. He could not let her go. Amy started to walk toward the door. Bloodfang moved to block her way, but he was careful, not to hurt her. He lowered his head and looked at her with his red eyes. They were not angry anymore. They were sad. The little girl understood. She reached up and hugged his big nose. It was like hugging a warm rock, but she did not care. "I don't want to leave you either," she said. "You're my friend." That word changed everything. Bloodfang had never heard that word before, not in any language, but somehow he knew what it meant. It meant someone who cared about you, someone who was kind to you, someone who would not hurt you or leave you alone. Amy was his friend. The great Warbeast felt something break inside his chest. All the walls he had built around his heart came tumbling down. 300 years of anger and pain began to melt away. For the first time since he was a baby, Bloodfang felt love. He lowered himself to the ground and let Amy climb onto his back. She was so light that he barely felt her weight, but her presence filled him with warmth and joy. He had a friend now, someone who cared about him. "Let's go find the others," Amy said, patting his neck. "I want them to meet you." Bloodfang stood up carefully. He had carried Vorthak warriors into battle many times, but this was different. Amy was not his master. She was his friend, and he would protect her with his life. As they walked through the broken hallways of the ship, other Grimwargs saw them. They stopped fighting and stared in shock. Their greatest warrior was carrying a tiny human child, and he looked happy. They had never seen him happy before. The Vorthak warriors were confused too. "Bloodfang," War Master Krek shouted. "What are you doing? Kill that human." But Bloodfang did not obey. For the first time in his life, he chose his own path. He walked past the shocked Vorthak and headed toward the sound of human voices. Amy had called them her people, so they must be good. Behind them, the other Grimwargs began to follow. They had seen something amazing. If the great Bloodfang could find happiness with a human child, maybe they could find something better than endless fighting too. The word friend had started something that would change everything. But Amy and Bloodfang did not know that yet. They only knew that they had found each other, and neither of them would ever be alone again. Captain John Hayes was very worried. He had been looking for Amy for 2 hours. The Vorthak had stopped fighting and gone back to their camp, but they still watched the human ship. John knew they would attack again soon. "We have to find her," he said to Danny and Lisa. "She's just a little girl. She cannot survive out there alone." They searched every room in the broken ship. They called her name until their voices were hoarse. But Amy was nowhere to be found. John feared the worst. Maybe the giant beasts had taken her. Then they heard something strange. Heavy footsteps were coming toward them. But they sounded different from before. They were slower and more careful. Danny grabbed his gun and pointed it at the doorway. What they saw made them freeze in shock. Bloodfang walked through the doorway, but he was not attacking. On his back sat Amy, safe and smiling. The little girl waved at them like she was riding a horse instead of a giant monster. "Hi, Captain Hayes," Amy called out. "Look at my new friend." John could not believe his eyes. The most dangerous creature on the planet was carrying Amy like she was precious cargo. Bloodfang's red eyes were not angry anymore. They looked calm and protective. "Amy, get away from that thing," Danny shouted. He aimed his gun at Bloodfang's head. "No," Amy said quickly. "Don't hurt him. He's my friend. His name is Bloodfang, and he's very nice." Lisa stepped forward carefully. She was a scientist and very curious about what she was seeing. "Amy, how did you do this? That creature should have killed you." Amy patted Bloodfang's neck. "He was lonely, just like me. He needed a friend, so I became his friend." It sounded so simple when Amy said it, but John knew it was the most amazing thing he had ever seen. This little girl had done something impossible. She had tamed the fiercest warbeast on the planet with nothing but kindness. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Amy stayed with Bloodfang, and he protected her from everything. He brought her food and water. He kept her warm at night. He played gentle games with her, being very careful not to hurt her with his size and strength. But the really strange thing was what happened to the other Grimwargs. The Vorthak had many warbeasts in their camp. They kept them in metal cages and fed them just enough to stay alive. The creatures were supposed to be wild and angry, ready to fight at any moment. But after they saw Bloodfang with Amy, something changed in them. They stopped roaring all the time. They stopped trying to bite their handlers. Instead, they watched the human camp with curious eyes. One young Grimwarg named Shadowclaw had been captured only a few months ago. He still remembered what it was like to be free. When he saw Bloodfang being gentle with the human child, he remembered something else. What it was like to be happy. The Vorthak noticed the change too. Warmaster Krex was very angry about it. The humans have used some kind of magic on our beasts, he shouted at his warriors. This cannot continue. But it was not magic. It was something much more powerful. It was the simple idea that there could be friendship between different species. Lisa studied what was happening from a distance. She was fascinated by the bond between Amy and Bloodfang. This is incredible, she told John. The child has somehow awakened emotional responses in that creature that were suppressed by years of conditioning. John watched Amy brushing Bloodfang's scales with a broken piece of metal. The giant beast closed his eyes and made a rumbling sound that was almost like a cat purring. How is this possible? John asked. I think these creatures are naturally social, Lisa said. The Vorthak have been training them to be killers, but that's not their true nature. Amy somehow reached past all that training to find the real personality underneath. Danny was still suspicious. What if it's a trick? What if the beast is just waiting for the right moment to attack? But as the days passed, it became clear that Bloodfang truly cared for Amy. When she was thirsty, he found clean water for her. When she was tired, he made a soft bed with leaves and grass. When she was sad about her parents, he gently nuzzled her with his big head until she felt better. The other humans began to trust Bloodfang too. Children were the first to approach him. They were not as afraid as the adults. Soon several kids were playing around the giant warbeast while he watched them carefully to make sure they did not get hurt. The adults took longer to accept him, but they could not argue with what they saw. Bloodfang was gentle and protective. He helped move heavy objects that the humans could not lift. He warned them when dangerous weather was coming. He had become part of their community. But the Vorthak were not happy about these changes. 3 weeks after Amy first met Bloodfang, the other Grimwargs began to refuse orders. When the Vorthak told them to attack practice targets, they just stood there. When their handlers tried to force them with electric sticks, they roared in anger, but did not fight back. This is your fault, Warmaster Krex shouted across the distance, to the human camp. Your magic is destroying our warriors, but it was not magic. It was hope. The Grimwargs had seen that life could be different. They had seen that they could be loved instead of feared. They had seen that they could choose friendship over violence. Shadowclaw was the first to break free from his cage. He bent the metal bars with his strength and walked toward the human camp. The Vorthak tried to stop him, but he was too strong. He wanted to see if the humans would be kind to him too. Amy was the first to greet him. She was not afraid, even though Shadowclaw was almost as big as Bloodfang. She walked up to him and held out her hand, just like she had done with Bloodfang. Hello, she said softly. Do you want to be friends too? Shadowclaw had never heard that word before, but he understood it now. He lowered his head and let the small human touch his nose. The warmth of her hand made him feel things he had forgotten. Joy, peace, love. Soon, other Grimwargs began breaking free from their cages. They did not attack the Vorthak. They just walked away, toward the human camp where they had seen kindness and friendship. The Vorthak were losing control of their greatest weapons, and it was all because one little girl had spoken one simple word to a lonely creature. Friend. The crisis comes to a head when Warmaster Krex captures Amy, intending to use her as leverage to reclaim Bloodfang and restore order to his forces. However, every Grimwarg in the Vorthak military breaks free simultaneously. drawn by an instinctive need to protect the small human who showed them what friendship means. Bloodfang leads an army of liberated warbeasts to rescue Amy, but instead of violence, the confrontation becomes a moment of transformation. Amy, speaking to the assembled Vorthak and Grimwargs, demonstrates that strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation and mutual respect. Captain Hayes negotiates a historic agreement. The humans will share their technology and knowledge, with the Vorthak in exchange for land and resources to build their colony. More importantly, they establish a new relationship between the Vorthak and their former war creatures, based on partnership rather than slavery. Amy becomes the first human Grimwarg, ambassador, helping other children and adults form bonds with the intelligent creatures. The Vorthak society slowly evolves, discovering that cooperation yields far greater achievements than conquest. Years later, Kepler 442b becomes known throughout human space as the Friendship World, where two species learned that sometimes the most profound changes come from the simplest truths spoken by the youngest voices. The story of how a single word from a human child transformed an entire civilization becomes legendary, proving that empathy and understanding can overcome even the most entrenched systems of violence and control. Bloodfang, now ancient even by Grimwarg standards, remains Amy's closest companion as she grows into a young woman. Their bond a living symbol of what becomes possible when different species choose to see each other, not as enemies or tools, but as friends.